Last year, I'll be honest with you, I would like to forget completely, as I think a lot of us would. But it didn't start out very well. I was, diagnosed with COVID to start it out. Got over that, thought, oh, I'm doing good now. Then I started to get to the point where I couldn't breathe. So I went to the doctor, and she said, okay, we're going to get your lung, get an x-ray. And she had put me on antibiotics and so forth and so on. Found out I had fluid on the lungs. So she said, well, you have to have that taken off. And she said, we're going to get you anyhow, can't remember the but anyhow, thoracentesis. So I went in and had that done. Wasn't bad. I mean, you had to be awake through this whole thing, which, trust me, people, you don't want to have this done if you don't have to. You sit on the edge of the gurney, and you put your arms over the table on a pillow, and they put this needle in your back, and they proceed to take the fluid out of your lungs. Well, the first time, oh, this is easy. God's with me, I can handle this, not a problem. They took 2 liters of fluid out of my lung. Okay, 2 weeks later, I'm having the same problems again. She said, okay, now I got to send you. She says, you're going to have another one done. But she said, I'm sending you to a specialist, a lung specialist. So we went to the lung specialist, had the second one I had done. That wasn't quite as easy. That was a little more painful. Got through it. The third time I went to this lung specialist, and he said, okay, we're going to have a biopsy done. I said, am I going to be asleep for this? He says, yes. I said, thank you. I said, I don't want to go through this awake. He said, no, you'll be asleep. I said, okay. So he did that. Went back, and he says, your lung is filled up with fluid again. He says, we're going to send you for another thoracentesis. I says, oh no, not again. Well, the third time, I'm sorry, I don't use this word very often, was hell. I came out of there, you can ask him, I was crying. I was in so much pain. Well, you figure, every 2 weeks for 2 months, having this done, my body did not have enough time to recuperate. So by this time, I ended up going back to my cancer doctor. He knew I had the cancer, and he said, okay, we know you have lung cancer. He said, but we have to find out what stage or what kind. I said, okay, fine. And he said, by the way, he says, your lung is filled with fluid again. I said, no, I'm not going through this again. He says, what do you mean you're not going through this again? He didn't know I had 3 of these procedures done. And he says, and I said, I'm in so much pain now. I said, I can't hardly handle it. I said, I know God's with me. I said, and everything else, but I said, I can't handle it anymore. He said, you went through what? I said, I went through 3 of these. He says, there's no way you should have ever even went more than once. He said, no. He says, we're going to put a tube in your side, and it will be taken out that way. I said, okay, I can handle this. And he said, while we're at it, he says, when you go in for that, he said, we're going to put a port in too so that you can get your chemotherapy through that they don't have to be plugging you up with needles all the time. I says, sounds good to me. He says, okay. I said, oh, by the way, I says, do I have to be awake for this? He says, no. He said, you are going to be under what they call twilight. I said, anything so I don't have pain? He said, no, you're not going to have pain. I says, good. So we had that done and all that, and so we went for 2.5 months where they drained my lung through the tube out of my side, which was not painful at all, trust me. It was wonderful. But the second time I went in for my chemo to go through the port, Guess what? God had another plan. I don't understand it, and I still had my faith. And I kept saying to the doctor and the nurses, God has his plan. I said, I have my faith. He's going to take care of me. Okay. The port went bad. It was all open and everything. So they got me through that. I went in Friday. I always go in on a Thursday for my chemo. And that Friday, I went back into the hospital, and they had to take the port out and put a new one in, and they put it on this side. Thank you, Lord. It worked. I have not had to have any problems with that one. It has been working. So, third treatment comes, and he says, well, okay, now we're going to go and have a CAT scan done to see how the chemo is working. I says, okay. So we went in and we had the CAT scan done. And I went in at 6 o'clock. I was supposed to go in, have the CAT scan done. Well, they didn't have a nurse there to take care of through the port. And they tried to do this way. I said, you're not going to get the blood. I said, you're not going to get it open. They couldn't do it. We sat there for 4 hours before they could get a nurse in to put it through the port for a 5-minute CAT scan. I said, God, okay. I mean, I had no pain or anything. I just tired of waiting, sitting and waiting. And he had to sit and wait too. So anyhow, eventually we got that done. Went home that night, and the following week I was supposed to go back to the doctor and get the results and have my 4th chemo. Well, that night, I usually wake up around 2, 3 o'clock at night, and I can't go back to sleep for a couple hours. That's my time where I pray. And I was praying and praying and praying, and I have a habit of not praying for myself. I pray for everybody and anybody. And I'm laying there. Now, I have constant ringing in my ears. And that's why sometimes if you're talking to me, I'm asking you, I'm sorry, can you say that again? Because I don't need hearing it, but I just need you to repeat it. I'm laying there and I'm praying. All of a sudden, a peace came over me. It's something you have to have it actually happen to you because you can't explain it. It was like I was transported into another world. Everything got peaceful, quiet, no ringing. It was dead silence. I thought, okay, is this me? Am I passing away or what? No. Next thing I knew, I heard this voice. God was talking to me. I was so, I don't know how to explain it. I wasn't scared. I just was totally, I just laid there and I listened. He said, Diane, I am with you. I am not going to leave you. I am making this promise to you. You are not going to die. I am healing you, Diane, of this cancer. You are going to make your granddaughter's wedding in October. He said, and most of all, he says, Diane, I have plans for you. I am not finished with you. I will take care of you and I am going to heal you. I couldn't answer him. I couldn't do anything. I just laid there and listened. Next thing I knew, everything came back to the way it was. I heard every little thing at night. The ringing came back. I thought, well, God, you could at least took that too. But, I'm happy. But after that, I finished my prayers. I don't think I even told him the next day. I think it took me a couple of days before I told him what happened. And we went and we got my test results, and he said the tumor that was like this went down to this. I said to Dr. Vivito, I says, God's working. He says, yes. He says he is. He says, but so's the chemo. I says, I know. I says, but I said, God gave us the reason that we have this chemo. He says, you're right. I says, God's with me. He said, and I got to tell you, he says, when you walked in here that day, he says, I would have gave you next to nothing chance that you were going to come out of this. He says, because that's how bad you were. But I was in so much pain, he gave me, I forgot to say that, Dr. Vivito gave me pain pills, and that helped. And that actually did help, that I ended up sleeping most of the time. Didn't eat much. Between the chemo and the pain pills, I could not eat. And I lost a lot of weight. But needless to say, that's gone and done. But so then we proceeded to have the rest of the chemo. And I kept saying, no, I have my faith in God. God's going to take care of all this. And after the 6th treatment, had another CAT scan. Well, Roy and I just looked at each other and we held our hands, and when we went into the doctor's office, and I says, we were both a little scared. We said, no, God said he's going to take care of this, and he's going to do it. And we know what's going to come out of this. And he says, okay. It took forever for Dr. DeVito to come in the office, which is nothing unusual. But came in, and he's all smiles. He says, Diane, how are you feeling? I said, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling real good. He says, I got good news for you. He says, the tumor's gone.
Not quite.
He says, what was like this is now this. He says, there's just enough there. He says that what is left, he says, we consider it is fairly well gone. You're healed pretty well. He says, but not completely, but he says, you're going to be healed. He says, you're healing. He says, now, he said, we got to start the immunotherapy, which is Keytruda, which is not chemotherapy. And you're not supposed to get sick on it. Well, for some reason or other, I got to be different. I still get sick, and I'm going to ask him about that again this Thursday. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, now things are going to start getting better. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to start getting my energy back. I'm going to feel more like myself, and I can start doing the things I always did. No. My problem is I'm impatient. And God has got to start giving me some more patience than what I have. I'm sorry. And then he decided he was going to do something different again for me. I ended up with cellulitis in my legs. Well, I went to the emergency room. They gave me medication. Went on that for 10 days. I thought it was getting better. Well, guess what? It wasn't. I'm always cold. He woke up in the middle of the night, and I didn't have no covers on. He says, took my temperature. I had a temperature of 100.7. He said, you're going to the hospital. I said, no, you're going to the hospital. Well, I ended up in the hospital last week on Thursday night till Monday. They pumped me with so many antibiotics, honest to gosh. I didn't know you could get so much antibiotics. I really didn't. But they sent me home Monday. I was I'm still low in blood. But because of the blood shortage, because of the COVID, I cannot get a blood transfusion. I have to be under 6. I am 6.5. They started me on something new, which they call granite. They gave me 2 shots of that in the hospital. Apparently it worked because they sent me home. I'm here. I go to the doctor on Thursday and we'll find out what's going to happen. I am still very weak, but at least now I'm eating, which makes him ecstatic because I was not eating before. And that was one of our biggest problems. We were arguing back and forth. You got to eat, Diane. I said, I can't eat. You got to eat. I can't eat. We argued about that all the time. And I haven't been on pain medication for at least 8 months. I have not been on pain medication. Thank God for that. And but I know God has a plan. And there are days where, I'll be honest with you, I do get very down. I do lose a little bit of my faith. But I put myself back into my situation and I go back to God and I say, God, help me. Again, please forgive me for my fact that I'm lost my faith for a little bit. And he says, I know he does forgive me. And please understand that it doesn't matter what you go through in life. You're going to have days where you're going to be down, you're going to be out, but don't give up. Please always let you know that God is with you and he loves you and he cares about you. And it does help to have family that loves you and cares about you. You have a church family that loves you and cares about you, gives you food while you're sick, prays for you constantly, and you have a husband that takes good care of you. And that is the best thing of all. He has been through this too, and I just praise him and I want everybody to know how much I love him and that he needs your prayers too, because he went through this with me. And I don't know how he did it, but he got through it. And I just want everybody to know to please don't lose your faith in God. He's there for you, and he loves you. Thank you.
I got through that by the faith of God. Anybody that doesn't depend on him for their lives is mistaken.
That's right.
They're hurting themselves. God promised he will never, Hebrews 25, I think it is, he promises he will never leave or forsake us. Amen. And to God be the glory. Amen.